I was thinking about, and we were talking about this before we hit record on this conversation, about where the market is heading. So what have you seen recently, and where do you think the trends are heading in terms of the recruitment process in general? I think specifically quite interested in the methods that companies are using to fill that sort of mid-management to senior level roles, which is a lot of the clients that I work with. They're in that position, but it's often been quite a long time since they've actually had to do the whole job application process. And so it's, being good at a job and being a job applications are two very different things. So what's new and what's coming in terms of this whole process? If you're speaking to someone mid-senior level, hasn't done this for a while, what do they need to know?
That's a really good question, and I think probably answered in two or three ways. I think you talk about process there, and let's start there, because I think that is very important. And I think fundamentally, if you're looking at the recruitment process bit rather than the talent strategy bit for a senior hire, I wouldn't say that has evolved significantly in my time in recruitment. The tools for assessment have, but the due diligence that goes into a senior hire is always pretty complex and detailed, and has been for a considerable amount of time. How that's changed subtly over time, and obviously online assessments, psychometric assessment, disc profiling, case studies, the things that people bring into the process are really quite organizational specific, but the fundamentals of those processes I don't think have significantly changed. The tools and the techniques might have done a little bit, and depending on the sector you're in, is it a heavy tech role? Is it a non-tech role? There will be subtle nuances in that, but if you look at most organizations, say Series A, B, C and above, they all go and do a full industry search. It's very rare that they would just hire someone because their network knows someone. It happens, of course it does, but even if they want to hire that person, they will still go through a fairly comprehensive due diligence process. They'll want to know who's out there in the market. They'll want to talk to the best people in the market. So I think in a sense that hasn't fundamentally shifted. I think what has fundamentally shifted is the market dynamics that we've seen. So if you kind of look back over the last 10 years and the most recent Gallup State of the Global Workplace Force report, for example, paints a pretty grim picture. Well-being in work has declined and is declining. Engagement levels are declining. We have a real issue there, and I think actually these things are the things that are going to be driving how people recruit differently. And the process itself might not change that much, but the things they're looking to address within that process are changing. So in terms of how they outwardly present themselves around things like well-being, mental health, how do they look after their leaders? I think this is going to be crucial. We're at a big tipping point there. How are they going to manage the hybrid world? We're moving towards that, and certainly in the early stage, the growth business stage, people are looking at the global talent market now rather than just, this individual must come from London. If the best person's sitting in Hong Kong or New York or somewhere really remote, that doesn't necessarily mean they won't hire them. So you've got the kind of globalization of the workforce, and it's much easier to hire globally. So I think that also feeds into the process itself. I did a search a couple of years ago for a business in Europe. They wanted a CTO. That CTO had to come from Europe. So that was quite easy. You mapped the market. There was probably 200 to 300 candidates on the long list. We whittled that down. But there were some parameters there that were easy to work with. Those parameters are blurred now. They're much bigger. And actually, from a client side, a recruiter side, and even the candidate side, that makes the market so much bigger and actually harder to navigate. So I think that's going to be quite a key thing.
I think there's two things I'm just going to bring back a little bit there, because first of all, I think there's a great amount of reassurance that the fundamentals haven't changed, but the way in which it works, or the fundamentals haven't changed, but perhaps some of the parameters and the tools used have done. And I think that's very reassuring for a lot of people. Secondly, I'm just going to we talked about that even fairly early stage organizations are going to want to do a full view of the market. And I think that puts tension on the idea that your network will find you the job, because the network will find you a job means that you network your way into being top of the list when it comes to a role coming up. But the due diligence of going out to the full market to get a full picture suggests that this is less value. So there's a tension between those 2 points of view. How would you sort of balance those two concepts?
That's a good point, and I think you got to look at the drivers behind that for a start. I think maybe the very very early stage is slightly inconsistent with what I've meant there. I think you've got to look at the dynamics of the board. What do the board want? There are a lot of external factors that are driving what that search might look like. So on the one hand, organizations might need to and want to go and do that full market map. And conversely, there are many organizations that don't. There's a brilliant guy I spoke to last week that's very successfully transitioned into climate. We can talk about that a bit more in a minute in terms of how that's been done. But that was very much a network thing. And on the face of it, it's like, how did you get that job? It sounds amazing. But so both cases do, without doubt, still coexist. But I guess what I was trying to say is that the process itself, I think, is largely unchanged. It's the dynamics around that that's definitely driving different behaviors.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I take from that point, that this full market search and this network your way through, is full market search suggests to me that you need to be visible in order to be found. So that kind of broadcasting of your position and your presence, and normally digital in this day and age, your digital presence and degree of fit for your future role is as important as your who do you know and how do you know them. So I guess it's a bit of a pincer action. And I think often there is a network, but also the how you present to the world is quite important here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everyone talks about profiles and CVs, but actually that's just a very small part of your profile. LinkedIn is obviously very commonly used now, and I think you really got to think about how you're identified on there, how you identify yourself on there. Are you doing that in a way that's likely to elevate you on those target lists if an organization is going out to search? So I think the two need to match up. I think LinkedIn can be a little bit more generic in a way, because your profile and your covering letter might not, would elevate your skills and experience for that particular role. But your LinkedIn profile just does still need to say what you do, so people can find that. People use varying degrees of kind of ability and technology to identify you. I've been doing it a long time. There's so many different tools and techniques I would use to uncover the whole market, whether I'm doing search or not, versus someone that's not done it before. They might just rely on basic keyword parameters. For example, if you don't fit that keyword parameter, you're not going to show up. So, it's a challenge, and it doesn't mean you want to see 15 pages of keywords on your profile, but it is a challenge. It is a challenge. And I think as an active job seeker, actually, you're looking for the jobs that fit you rather than necessarily people coming to you. You probably want a nice balance of both, if I'm honest.
Yeah. I'm not going to ask you to give away your special sauce and industry secrets, but what one thing would you suggest to candidates that is the step beyond keyword stuffing their LinkedIn profile?
It's being visible. I think the keywords are an element of that, but some people don't put anything on their profile. They'll just put CTO and the company name and one line, and that's fine. And they don't really have anything in their profile section about them. That's just very vanilla, very boring, if you like. It doesn't say anything about them. I think that's where, if you look at where somebody sees your profile, the first thing they see is your opening profile statement. That needs to be engaging. That's your opportunity. If I like the look of that, then I'll go and maybe look at where they've worked, who they've worked for, who they're connected to. That's the bit that needs to jump out, I think, if I'm honest. The rest of it, if you know what you're doing, you look beyond all of that anyway. You know what you're looking for. But I think get that profile statement absolutely on point.
Yeah. So once you've got the basics of making sure that you're going to be found by whatever scraping algorithm that we have to address, the next bit is to have a sufficiently engaging intro to your profile to capture the eye of the human, the next level.
And also capture the eye of, as you say, the scrapers out there that people are unfortunately using, just to give yourself the best possible opportunity, really.
Oliver, tell me,